Someone else's house. Story 1. I can tell you exactly what a smart lock sounds like at 2:12 a.m. when the wrong person enters the right code. It doesn't click like in movies. It chirps, 3 bright beeps, a software, and then the bolt glides back like the house is welcoming a friend. That sound still wakes me up sometimes. It was April of 2022, early spring in Flagstaff, Arizona. I was 29, a freelance UX designer, in town for a week of remote work and hiking. Hotels were pricey, so I booked a highly rated casita behind a larger home on a quiet cul-de-sac, a private guest house with separate entrance, 5 stars across the board, Superhost badge, all the words that make you feel safe. The photos showed warm desert tones, a tiny patio strung with cafe lights, and a narrow galley kitchen. The listing mentioned an owner's closet, do not open, and an exterior laundry room that the cleaner might access between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. reasonable. The check-in instructions were a cheerful PDF with the keypad code, Wi-Fi password, and a note, "We live in the main house but travel often. Text with any questions." I arrived just before sunset. The casita sat at the end of a flagstone path beside a high cedar fence. The keypad blinked a friendly green after I entered the code, and the lock retracted with that soft battery hum. Inside smelled faintly of eucalyptus cleaner. A small print by the door listed house rules. Shoes off, no parties, quiet hours after 10, curtains closed at night for neighbor privacy. I dragged my roller bag in and checked the place out. Everything looked like the photos, down to the bowl of wrapped caramels on the table. The owner's closet was a normal interior door near the kitchenette, painted to match the wall, a little sticky around the knob with a cheap key and knob lock, and a hand-lettered label, "Owner's Closet. Thanks." A sliver of light showed at the bottom where the threshold trim didn't meet the tile. Across from it, a short hall led to the bedroom and a bathroom with the world's most enthusiastic exhaust fan. The back wall had a glass patio door looking onto the little string-light courtyard and the high fence. Cozy, harmless. I texted the host, Lisa, to say I checked in, loved the place, and was heading to the grocery store. She replied right away with a smiley and a reminder. "We're off-site tonight. Let us know if you need anything. Please keep the side gate closed. The wind likes to swing it." I cooked, unpacked, called my sister, and worked until nearly 11. The cul-de-sac felt quiet in that way out-of-town neighborhoods do. Driveways dark, as if someone unplugged the world. The casita felt snug with the curtains pulled. I clicked the deadbolt from the inside, even though the keypad lock already set itself. Redundancy made me feel better. I slept hard until 1:58 a.m., when a beep dragged me to the surface. Half dream, I thought it was the fridge. Then it came again. 3 cheerful chirps, somewhere closer to the front of the casita. I propped myself up, confused. The third sound clarified itself. A delicate metallic skitter, like a bolt just beginning to slide. Every nerve woke at once. I was out of bed before my brain formed the words, bare feet silent on the rug. The living area was dim from the microwave clock glow. I stepped into the hall and froze. At the front door, a thin seam of light moved. The keypad on the outside was beeping through the hollow core. I heard the whir of the motorized bolt. The deadbolt I'd set by hand, thank God, held fast and thumped against the hardware inside the doorframe. Then a man's voice, low through the door, almost pleasant. "Hey there, housekeeping. Sorry it's late. Just dropping fresh towels." Housekeeping. At 2 in the morning. I didn't answer. My heart hammered so loud I was sure he could hear. Something, a tote bag, shifted on the mat. The doorknob turned and bumped against the deadbolt stop with a soft clack, once, twice, like a polite knock performed by hardware. The man didn't jostle hard. He wasn't testing strength. He was confirming the deadbolt. Lisa said it was okay. He added, that same level tone. The last guest said you were out of towels. I backed down the hall without thinking and grabbed my phone from the nightstand. The lock beeped again. Someone trying the code a second time. I thumbed open messages with clumsy, cold fingers and texted Lisa. Is someone here? Front door keypad is going off. A guy says housekeeping. The 3 dots appeared at once. Then, no one is scheduled. Please do not open. Calling you now. Her call came in within seconds. I slid it to answer but didn't speak. From the door, a soft exhale, then the sound of gravel crunching as footsteps moved off the little flagstone walk toward the side gate. I could picture the layout outside from earlier. Driveway to path to gate to the tiny courtyard behind the casita. The courtyard's patio door had a simple thumb turn on the inside, but the exterior laundry room opened onto that same little space. Lisa's voice was a whisper gone sharp. Are you safe? Are you in the casita? Yes, I breathed. He had the code. The code? The keypad code. Yes. Silence. Then, lock the patio slider now. There's a stick you can lay in the track. Use it. I'm calling 911. Stay on with me. I crossed the living room in 2 strides and threw the thumb turn on the patio door. It was already locked. A weathered dowel, the kind people use as a manual jam, leaned against the frame. I dropped it into the bottom track and tested the door. Solid. From outside came the soft squeal of the laundry room door, metal on metal, a hinge. The laundry room, the listing had said, was exterior access only. Useful for housekeeping. Terrible if housekeeping isn't housekeeping. Footsteps scuffed on concrete. Close now. I had a brief, absurd flash of the listing photos. That cute bistro table under fairy lights. Then a shadow crossed the curtain. Elongated, indistinct, the shape of a man moving past the glass. He tried the patio door, slow, testing. The lock clicked under his fingers. The door jiggled, once, twice. The jam stick moaned in the track but held. I stepped back, heart in my throat. He leaned toward the glass. Even through the curtain I felt him. Hey, came the soft voice, muffled. Real quick, just towels. I wanted to scream just to tear something, but my fear came out as a thin thread. Police are on their way, I said steady as I could. My host is on the phone with them. He didn't reply. The motion lights over the courtyard popped on and blinded the silhouette for a second. He turned away and moved out of the pool of brightness like water, quick but not rushed. Lisa's voice sharpened. Can you get to the owner's closet? What? Listen, the closet inside your casita, the locked one. It backs to our garage storage. He might have a key to the garage side. I'm telling the dispatcher now. As if cued by her words, a thin light bloomed at the bottom edge of the closet door, a thread of warmer yellow than my own lamps. It glowed brighter, then narrowed as if a door on the other side swung slowly inward into a lit space. I could hear it now, the sound of a latch probed on the far side, the tinny click of a key in a cheap knob, the dry complaint of a strike plate that hadn't been hit straight in a while. The hairs on my arms lifted in a wave. I crossed the tiny kitchen in 3 steps, grabbed a butcher knife because my hands needed something to clutch, and then put it back because I didn't want to be the person who opened a door with a knife. I grabbed the heaviest pan instead. I slid a chair under the closet knob and kicked the legs until they wedged hard beneath the handle, low, so it would lever against a shove. Whoever was on the other side tested the knob. The chair creaked but held. Lisa was still talking, half to me, half to the 911 operator. Yes, separate entrance. Yes, my guest is alone. Yes, exterior laundry. No, we don't recognize the voice. We had a handyman last year, but... No, I changed the code. She broke off. Wait, I changed the code on the app, but the lock hardware didn't push it. I'm seeing the old code in the cache. Oh my God. A slow run of gooseflesh climbed my neck. He hadn't guessed the code. He'd used an old one that still worked. The person on the other side of the closet door stopped jiggling and just stood there. I felt the weight of attention through wood, the way you feel someone looking at you across a crowded room. The tiny seam of light at the bottom didn't change. He wasn't moving. He was listening. "Sir," Lisa said then, voice pitched high and bright like customer service turned into a weapon. "The police are 2 minutes out. Please leave the property." She paused. "We have you on camera." A bluff. The only camera had been a video doorbell at the main house, and I suddenly remembered it had a small paper lunch bag taped over it earlier. Probably from painting. Lisa had laughed in the listing captions. My stomach turned. A soft, almost amused breath came from the other side of the door. He tried the knob one more time with a quick twist, like a wrist flick. The chair slid a hair and bit into the wood. Then the light strip under the door dimmed as the garage side light went off. Tiny darkness flooded the seam. The house exhaled. Footsteps retreated on the far side. Boot against concrete, a heel dragging, the gentle tick of something metal against something metal, like a clip brushing a doorknob. 10 seconds later, the patio motion light blinked again, then went dark. The only sounds were the refrigerator humming too loud and my blood in my ears. "Don't move," Lisa said. "They're turning onto the street." The next 5 minutes braided into a single rope of sensation, a siren far away. Then nearer, the thump of car doors. A male voice at the front, loud and trained, "Paulus," and another at the gate. I kept my hand on the chair pressed under the closet knob like my touch was part of the lock. A radio crackled. Then knuckles rapped on the patio glass. "Police, Flagstaff PD. You okay in there?" I called back that I was. When they asked me to unlatch the slider, my fingers worked like rubber bands. I pulled the dowel, turned the thumb lock, and slid the door just enough for a uniformed arm to catch it. 2 officers stepped in, breath smoking in the cool spring air that had rushed inside. One was young with kind eyes. The other older, eyes scanning corners like the world was an X-ray. They swept the casita and the garage storage on the other side of the closet. The garage door to the street stood ajar. On a shelf were a roll of contractor bags, an old shop vac, a bucket labeled with a franchise cleaning company's name, and a thin pry bar with fresh paint scratches caught in its teeth. The older officer lifted it and shook his head. "Somebody's kit," he said. Outside, a third officer found footprints in the soft dust on the side path, boot tread leading from the cul-de-sac to the side gate and out through the main driveway. No vehicle on any camera. The video doorbell on the big house was indeed taped over from the earlier paint job. In the laundry room, the lock showed polished rub around the latch where someone had used a key often. The officer pointed with a pencil. "Not forced," he said. "Familiar." Lisa and her partner arrived 20 minutes later, pale and embarrassed and furious in equal parts. They'd been at a short-term rental they managed across town. They said their cleaner had access codes for laundry and garage. She pulled up the smart lock app on her phone and went white. I changed the door code last month after a different guest checked out," she said, hands shaking. "But the lock didn't sync because the batteries were low. It kept the old code. That's on me." The officer's face softened but didn't change shape. He'd seen this before. "Who had the old code?" he asked. "Our cleaner," she said, "and the handyman we used last year, until we stopped using him." "Why'd you stop?" Lisa glanced at her partner. He made a guest uncomfortable. Showed up unannounced to fix a leak. There wasn't one. We cut ties and changed the codes. Or thought we did. The officers took statements. They asked me to describe the voice through the door. Calm, lower register, no accent I could place. They asked about height, build, anything I'd seen in the silhouette. Taller than me, wearing a hat or hood. They asked if I'd opened anything, touched anything. I told them about the chair, the pan, the jam stick, because in the moment details felt like prayers you say to keep the world anchored. They finally cleared out around 4 a.m., leaving a patrol car to sit outside until dawn. Lisa replaced the front door batteries, pushed a new code through the app twice, and watched the bolt cycle in and out with the satisfying solidity of a lock truly locking. She cried then, sudden and short like a hiccup. "I am so sorry," she said to me. "This is the nightmare, you know, that someone uses hospitality as a script." She gave me the option to cancel and move to a hotel on their dime. It was the middle of the night, and I was shaking too hard to pack. So I stayed, with the chair under the closet knob, the dowel in the slider, and my suitcase open like a parachute I could jump into if I had to. Morning made everything look like overreaction. Sun on the cedar fence, a woodpecker somewhere, distant traffic. Fresh towels actually arrived at 10, with a woman in a branded t-shirt and a clipboard who kept apologizing, even though it wasn't her fault. I watched her show me every key she had: laundry, garage, now rekeyed. Nothing to the casita. She held her hands up like a surgeon and said, "I don't even want a house key," and I believed her. The police never found the man. A week later, Lisa texted. The old handyman had popped up on a neighborhood app advertising after-hours maintenance. A different host reported a midnight towel drop with the same voice through a door, the same old code working until it didn't. The thread filled with advice. Remove the owner's closet conduit. Hard reboot the smart locks after every stay. Never push code changes on low batteries. Never let workers stack copies of keys. Common sense things that look obvious only after your heart has spent a night trying to beat through your throat. People always ask why I didn't open the door to a person who sounded calm and helpful. I grew up in a small town. Kindness is the first tool we reach for. But here's what I learned behind someone else's door at 2:12 a.m. Scripts cut both ways. His was, "I have towels." Mine is, "I'm calling 911. His was, "Your host said it's fine." Mine is, "Name and badge through the door." Neither proves the truth at midnight. Only locks and choices do. I still book Airbnbs. I still like guest houses and little patios and local coffee on a stranger's porch. But I ask different questions now. Where does the owner's closet lead? Is the laundry truly exterior? What's the policy on codes? I wedge a doorstop under the deadbolt at night and keep a dowel in the slider even when it's locked. I set my car keys on the nightstand because a panic button can buy seconds. And when someone knocks after quiet hours with a pleasant voice and a promise of towels, I don't open. I don't argue. I don't apologize. I listen for the beeps of the lock like a doctor listens for a heartbeat. If I hear them, I know what to do. Airbnb someone else's house. Story 2. I didn't believe in house rules that could get someone hurt until the night I saw a pair of bare feet standing just inches behind a locked door in my Airbnb. It was late August 2019, the tail end of tourist season, on the Oregon coast near Manzanita. I'd booked a 2-week stay to finish my senior thesis in peace, a quiet Victorian Airbnb with a big porch, salt gray shingles, and a view of dune grass tipping toward the Pacific. The listing belonged to a woman named Margaret, whose reviews were a wall of 5 stars. Immaculate, safe, charming. She had a tidy profile picture, silver hair in a twist coral cardigan, the sort of smile that belonged to a school librarian. It felt like a safe bet. Her check-in message arrived the morning of my drive. The key would be under a blue pot by the porch swing. Please remove sandy shoes. Please respect quiet hours after 10 p.m. And one line that felt like an afterthought. Upstairs, please do not open the door at the end of the hall. Storage only. Thanks. I remember because I screenshotted it. It felt like the kind of harmless boundary every old house had. A closet full of paint cans, an owner's stash of family things. Nothing about it sounded sinister at noon on the highway with sunlight in my lap. By the time I parked, fog had already stitched itself along the street. The house looked exactly like the photos. just more lived in. A clean welcome mat, a bright red hummingbird feeder, pots of geraniums. When I lifted the blue planter, the key was there, cold and sandy. The front door creaked in a way that felt rehearsed, like a curtain rising to the first act. The inside smelled faintly of lemon oil and something powdery, like talc or old linens. The entry opened to a staircase on the right and a parlor on the left with doilies under the lamps. Seashells lined the windowsill. Margaret appeared from the kitchen wiping her hands on a dish towel, exactly as pictured but somehow smaller. She had that careful way of moving I associate with people who've lived alone for a long time. Each motion measured so nothing falls. "You must be Emily," she said. "Welcome, dear." Her voice carried a classroom patience. "Let me show you your room." We went up the narrow staircase, the carpet runner thin underfoot. My room was the first door on the right. White iron bed, braided rug, a window that faced the street. The bathroom was opposite, clawfoot tub and a bowl of hotel soaps. At the end of the hall, half in shadow, sat the door from her message. Same white paint as the plaster walls, same old glass knob as every other door in the house. The only difference was the lock. Not a skeleton key plate like the bedroom doors, but a modern key and knob that didn't match the hardware. The paint around it had been slopped on in a slightly different sheen, like it had been done later. Margaret must have seen me notice. "Storage, storage," she said lightly, tapping the knob with a knuckle. "The old place has no cellar worth speaking of, so I keep the bins in there. Nothing you need." I said I understood. She showed me the kitchen, the pantry shelf labeled guest, the kettle. "I do ask that you let me know if you plan to be out late," she added, the dish towel twisting in her hands. "Our quiet hours are posted in the listing." "Of course," I said, already feeling the relief of a quiet place with a door I could close on grad school stress. "I'll be working a lot." Those first 24 hours were peaceful in a way I still miss. The hush of fog, the stove tick of the kettle, gulls heckling in the distance. I sat up at the little kitchen table with my laptop and index cards, and Margaret drifted between rooms like a cat, present, then not. She was chatty in small bursts. "You must go to Bread and Ocean for a morning bun," then disappeared to the garden. That night I went to bed with the window cracked and the ocean hissing under the wind. The house creaked like old bones, settling into a chair. That's normal in old houses, I told myself. Normal and comforting. It was night 2 when I heard the first sound from the end hall door. I woke up around 1:40 a.m. for no reason I could name. The street was silent. The house was not. At the edge of hearing, from the far end of the hall, came a slow, soft scrape, like a cardboard box being drawn across a wood floor. Not loud, not frantic, just there. I lay still, listening. The scrape stopped. After a count of 20, I got up, opened my door, and stepped into the hall. Moonlight drew a pale rectangle of the floor from the window over the stairs. Margaret's door, second on the left, was shut. The locked door at the end sat white and blank, paint catching a little silver from the window. Nothing moved. I stood there long enough for the hair on my arms to settle, then went back to bed and pretended I hadn't heard anything. The next morning, I mentioned it over toast like a joke. "It's funny. I woke up last night, and I could have sworn I heard moving, light boxes." Margaret's smile didn't crack. "This old thing moans when fog settles. It'll sound like a drunk man fell into the walls." She buttered her toast right to the crust. "You'll get used to it." So I tried. I ran the kettle before bed to give myself a last sound. I wore earplugs for an hour, and for a day or two, it was fine. I walked the beach, ate clam chowder, wrote paragraphs that finally started to make sense. Margaret remained the perfect host in a mild way. Fresh towels left folded on my bed. A note on the fridge recommending a Tuesday farmer's market. The locked door became a quirk my eyes slid past. Night 4, the noises changed. This time, it was footsteps, not the clump of a shoe, but the careful pad of bare feet on wood. I know the difference. I stiffened in bed, sheets cold suddenly, and listened. The steps weren't moving like someone walking a hallway. They were almost pacing, 5 or 6 slow paces and back again, confined to a short space. Then a pause. Then a hollow thump as if a palm pressed the inside of a door. My throat went dry. I sat up, grabbed my phone, checked the time, 2:13 a.m., and stepped into the hall with the flashlight on low. The beam lit the braided rug, then the scuffed lower half of the wall, then the end door. The hairline gap at the threshold gleamed. I crouched. I don't know what I thought I'd see. Dust bunnies. Nothing. When my light hit the gap, I saw toes. There. Pale. Right there. Close enough that the light warmed them. The nails were short and clean. The feet were motionless, like the person was standing and watching the gap the way I was. My hand jerked and the light skittered off the baseboard. When I steadied it again, the feet were gone, pulled back in a soundless swallow, and then the faintest brush of skin against wood told me I hadn't hallucinated it. I backed up fast enough to bang my elbow on the banister. I didn't make a sound somehow. I shut my door and leaned against it until my pulse stopped trying to outrun me. At breakfast, I couldn't get words to come out normal. I asked Margaret, deliberately casual, "Is anyone else staying here?" She looked up from the paper with an expression that landed somewhere between blank and irritated. "No," she said, "because I thought I heard footsteps upstairs." "You and me, dear," she said with a little shrug. "Unless you count the house mice." Her voice thinned. "I set traps in the pantry. Don't move them." I didn't mention the toes. I couldn't make my mouth shape it. After that, I noticed other details because fear makes you a scientist. The locked door was painted a slightly warmer white than the hallway. The doorknob had grease around the edges that looked fresh, like it had been handled a lot with hands that weren't clean. The key sat on a little dish in Margaret's room. Saw it through her open door when she passed to the bathroom, alongside a set of zip ties and a roll of blue painter's tape. Blue tape is not, by itself, suspicious. Seeing it next to the key to a locked interior room at the end of a hall where bare feet stand in the dark, it felt like a sentence I didn't know how to say. That afternoon, I went for a long walk and found reasons not to go home. I ate a late dinner at a place with pinball machines. I sat in my car and scrolled through Airbnb policies in the parking lot, looking for sentences like undisclosed rooms and safety. The app has a contact host button and a report this listing button. It does not have a the storage room has feet button. When I finally clicked contact support, a friendly chat bubble told me someone would email me within 24 hours. I stopped at the police station on Lanita Avenue. I rehearsed a sentence. "I'm staying in an errand and I heard noises from a locked room." The desk officer listened with a face that said he had heard stranger things. He asked me if I felt in immediate danger, if I'd seen a weapon or heard a voice, if anyone had asked for help. He explained, not unkindly, that without a clear welfare concern or cause, my best route was to leave, and if I believed someone was being held against their will, to call 911 from the house when it was happening. "You can always ask for a welfare check," he said. "But if the owner denies entry and we don't have cause, there's only so much we can do." I went back because leaving is big when all you have is a backpack and 2 weeks of plans pinned to a hope. Also because fear is sticky. It makes you slow. That evening, Margaret was honey sweet, as if she felt something in the air. "I made tea," she said. "Chamomile. Best for nerves." She watched me drink it. Her gaze wasn't unkind. It was measuring. Night 7 is the one I think about when I can't sleep. I had placed my suitcase open by the door like an escape hatch. Around 12:30 a.m., the house settled into that too quiet coast silence, where fog softens everything and even cars sound like whales turning underwater. From the end of the hall came a sound that wasn't a footstep. It was the delicate chime of a spoon against ceramic, a careful, polite clink, followed by the whisper of fabric sliding over wood. Feeding someone, my brain supplied without consent. Feeding them quietly so you don't wake the guest. I sat up and listened with a clarity that almost brightened the room. The sound moved, then a soft voice, not Margaret's, lower, a man's, murmured once. I couldn't catch words. Then Margaret, in a hush I'd never heard on her tongue, answered 2 or 3 syllables. The air between them felt rehearsed, not frantic, not new. Every part of me wanted to knock on that door and say, "Are you okay?" Another part pictured the key on the dish and the blue tape, and the desk officer's careful phrasing, and thought of being wrong at 2 in the morning in a hallway with no witnesses. I did something small instead. I wrote a note. "Do you need help? Slide this back under if yes." I printed it cleanly, rolled it tight, put a short strip of Scotch tape around the end so it would stay rolled, and set it on my nightstand because I couldn't make myself walk down that hall yet. The clink happened twice more in the next half hour, like refilling a glass. There was a soft cough from behind the door, the quiet that follows a person swallowing back a sound. Finally, the house shifted into a holding pattern I recognized as sleep. I slipped into the hallway like someone else had told me to go. The runner rug rasped under my toes. The end door glowed a little in the moonlight. I crouched and slid the note under, slow, breath held. It passed in 2 inches, stuck for a heartbeat, then disappeared. No sound, no feet this time. The house didn't breathe. I went back to my room and sat on the floor and waited like you do for test results. 10 minutes later, a scrape, paper against wood, moved under the door into the hall. I eased my own door, slid a hand out, and drew the paper to me. It wasn't the paper I'd given. It was a corner torn from something yellowed, the edges soft. On it, in the faint, careful print of someone who hasn't written much lately, were 2 letters, I and Sanat, yes, exactly, wise, with the downstroke of the E missing or a hand unsteady. I cannot describe the feeling of holding the shred. It wasn't terror. It was a clarity so bright it hurt. I dialed 911 in a way that felt slow and calm, and like being in the center of an accident. I gave the address, said there was a person behind a locked interior door who had indicated they needed help, said the host was present, and I was a guest. The dispatcher kept me on the line, asked me to stay inside my room with the door locked, asked me if I could hear voices now. No. Asked if the host knew I was calling. No. I was to wait for officers, then announced through my door when I heard them. In those minutes, a new sound began, not from the end door, but from Margaret's room. The gentle metal jingle of keys. A soft step. The whisper of a nightgown. The end hall doorknob turned, just a tick, then twice more. A key slid in, turned. The bolt clicked. I pressed the phone so hard to my ear it hurt. "They're opening it," I whispered. "Officers are on your street," the dispatcher said. "Do not exit your room." The front door downstairs rattled. A firm knock, and the immediate brisk cadence of a trained voice. "Police." Cut through the house like a blade cuts cloth. Margaret froze. I heard the key withdraw, the hinge groan a fraction without opening, then the quick click of the lock turning back the other way. Footsteps moved to the stairs in a pattern that did not sound like panic. It sounded like someone putting on a roll. The front door opened, her voice, airy and surprised. "Oh, officers, is everything?" I spoke then, loud enough to carry. "Upstairs, first room on the right." My voice shook. I didn't care. Everything sped up and slowed down at once. Boots on stairs. A second voice. My door opened to blue stripes and heavy belts, and a woman officer with steady eyes telling me, "You're okay. Stay here." Down the hall, the end door looked like it always had, white and blank. The keyhole glittered a little. An officer tried the knob. Locked. He looked to the woman. She looked to Margaret. "We need to check," she said. Margaret's mouth did something complicated. Anger, embarrassment, the brittle pride of someone who believes she is being misunderstood. "It's storage," she said. "You have no right to." "We're conducting a welfare check," the officer said, already turning to the lock. "Ma'am, if you have a key, use it now." What happened in the next 60 seconds is theirs to tell, not mine. I saw only slivers. The door opening slow enough to hesitate, then wider. A smell I didn't recognize at first, cleaner and something stale. The corner of a thin mattress. The outline of a person sitting and then flinching from the light. Soft words. "You're okay." The fluorescent snap of a radio. A blanket appearing from nowhere. Margaret's voice breaking, then tightening again like a wire drawn through a hole. They didn't take me to see, and I didn't ask. A female officer sat me on the top stair and talked low so my body would stand down. "You did exactly right," she said. "Exactly right." I left the house at 3:40 a.m. with my backpack and the sound of gulls beginning to argue in the dark. The officer walked me to my car. Margaret did not look at me as I went. She stood in the kitchen with her dish towel twisted in both hands, older by a decade, staring at a place on the table that wasn't there. I checked into a motel by the highway where the ice machine made more noise than the ocean. I slept with the TV on, and the door chain lashed, and the dresser dragged in front of the door, because habit is a story your body tells itself. I didn't leave a review. I didn't post a thread. I answered the detective's questions when he called. Weeks later, the local news link made its way to my inbox from a friend who didn't know the house was mine. Police conduct welfare check at vacation rental. Adult found living in unpermitted interior room. The article didn't name the person behind the door, and I won't either. It said ongoing investigation, code violations, custodial interference, words that are less dramatic than what it felt like to hold a torn scrap of paper that said, "Wise." Here is what stays with me, the politeness of it. The tidy kitchen. The doilies. The rules. The way danger lives, not only in places with broken locks and loud voices, but in apartments with 5-star ratings and house rules that include one line about a door you shouldn't open. The way fear makes you reasonable until it doesn't. The way help can be 2 letters long. People ask what I tell other travelers. I don't have a crusade, just habits now. Ask about locked interior rooms before you book. Trust a sound even when it's small. Know your police station location. Have a sentence you can say at a desk at midnight. Keep your bag half packed if your gut won't sit down. And if you ever see bare feet under a door in a house that isn't yours, believe that your eyes are not the part of you that's overreacting. I still book errands. I like porches and kettles, and the feeling of reading a stranger's spice rack, like a biography. But I also know what a modern key and knob looks like next to antique glass, and I pay attention to the seam of light at the bottom of a door that someone tells me is storage. Story 3. The Guest Who Never Left. It was the summer of 2019 in Asheville, North Carolina. I had just turned 30 and decided to take a week-long solo vacation. I'd been working overtime for months, my apartment lease was ending, and I needed a break before starting a new job. Instead of booking a hotel, I thought an Airbnb would be more personal and quiet. The listing I found was perfect, at least on paper. The photos showed a charming rustic guest house on the edge of the forest, with a wraparound porch, a hammock, and a cozy living room with exposed wooden beams. The host, Eleanor, had glowing reviews describing her as warm and accommodating. The price was surprisingly low, but I figured maybe it was just because it was a bit out of the way. I booked it without much thought. That was my first mistake. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was that the house looked slightly older than in the pictures. The paint on the porch railings was peeling, the wood looked weather-worn, and the hammock had a rip. Still, I told myself it was just normal aging. Eleanor greeted me in person. She was maybe in her late 50s, thin, with sharp blue eyes and a slow smile. She offered me iced tea and insisted on showing me around. The guest house was separate from the main house, but still close enough that her kitchen window faced my front door. Inside, everything matched the photos. Mostly, there was a faint smell of something stale, like an old closet, and a few odd personal items scattered about, including a pair of men's boots by the fireplace. "Oh, my son used to stay here," Eleanor said quickly when I glanced at them. "He's gone now, off traveling." I unpacked, planning to head into town for dinner. As I locked the door, I noticed one of the curtains in Eleanor's house twitch, as though someone was watching me leave. The first 2 days were fine, peaceful, even. I read on the porch, hiked a bit, and cooked my own meals in the tiny kitchenette. But every night, I had the same unsettling feeling, like someone was walking around outside the cabin after midnight. The third night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of footsteps on the porch, slow, deliberate, and heavy. My heart was pounding as I grabbed my phone and stayed perfectly still. I expected a knock, but instead, the steps moved to the side of the cabin. And then silence. In the morning, I checked outside. Nothing was missing, but one of the boots by the fireplace had been moved closer to the door. On the 5th day, I decided to leave early. My nerves were shot, and I didn't want to spend another night here. I was packing my bag when I heard Eleanor calling from outside. "You're leaving?" she asked, her voice tight. "Yeah, something came up," I lied. Her eyes narrowed. "You don't have to rush. I've got another guest coming next week, but there's no hurry." The way she said, "another guest," made my skin crawl. I left that afternoon and drove straight home. That night, as I unpacked, I got a message on the air map. It was from Eleanor. "You left in such a hurry. I hope you didn't see him." I never responded. I reported the message to Erm, but they said the account was no longer active. When I checked the listing again, it had been removed entirely. To this day, I don't know who him was, or if he was ever gone at all. I aksho kachish. I emoju priamo, zaraz drobidishish. Bilj naprzynu versiu tsaidili istorii. Rasha rivshi yi vici. Zdodakavimi tsanami vnochi. Dialogami te detaliani. Shab devesti yoi du pavnik 12000. Simvoliva azrobidishich. Bilj v atmosferi kanalu konkurenta. Kachish. Shabia odrazu zrobivti. Vice Kazali. Tak. Programa Chat GPT Skazala. Dober, Todi ia roshiriu vsiu tritiu istoriu, na temu erben / chuji, dim advici, shab vonug, vula abimnoyu, dital noyu, zdodakovimi tsanani hnochi, dialogami tana prushanimi momentami, podnistuv stili kanalu konkurenta. I diapazoni 1000012000. Symboliv. Story 3. The Guest Who Never Left. Extended version. It was the summer of 2019 in Asheville, North Carolina. I'd just turned 30 and had been grinding away at a job I didn't love, working extra hours to save for a move. My apartment lease was up, and I wanted a mental reset before starting fresh in a new city. I'd imagined lazy mornings, quiet evenings, and maybe a bit of local exploring. Nothing crazy. Hotels felt too sterile, so I scrolled through Airbnb listings until I found the one. A small, rustic guest house on the edge of the forest, separate from the host's main home. The photos looked straight out of a magazine. Sun streaming through lace curtains, a hammock swinging on a wraparound porch, an old fireplace in the corner. The host, Eleanor, had dozens of 5-star reviews describing her as warm, attentive, and respectful of privacy. The price was surprisingly low. My brain whispered that it was because it was a little out of town, but my gut said something else. I ignored my gut. When I arrived, the first thing that struck me was the silence. Not peaceful, but thick. The kind of silence that makes you instinctively lower your voice. The guest house looked mostly like the photos, but older. The white paint on the porch railing had chipped away in long strips, the wood beneath darkened from years of rain. The hammock was still there, but one end sagged where the rope had frayed. Eleanor came out of the main house to greet me. She was maybe in her late 50s, with thin gray hair pulled into a loose bun and startlingly bright blue eyes. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach those eyes. "You must be Matthew," she said, her voice warm but deliberate. "Long drive." "About 6 hours," I replied, shaking her hand. She offered me iced tea and gave me the tour. The guest house had a small living area with a kitchenette, a single bedroom, and a bathroom tucked in the back. Everything was clean, but there was a faint musty smell, like clothes left too long in storage. Near the fireplace, I noticed a pair of men's boots. They were scuffed, muddy along the soles, and positioned neatly side by side. "Oh, my son used to stay here," Eleanor said quickly when she caught me looking. "He's off traveling now. Left some of his things." I nodded and didn't think much of it. People leave stuff behind all the time. That first night, I fell asleep easily after the long drive. Sometime around 1 a.m., I woke to a faint creaking sound. At first, I thought it was the wind against the porch boards. Then I realized it was two steady, slow, deliberate footsteps. I sat up, straining my ears. The sound stopped. After a few tense minutes, I convinced myself it was just the house settling and went back to sleep. In the morning, Eleanor greeted me as if nothing had happened. She asked about my plans and offered suggestions for local hiking spots. By the third night, the feeling of being watched was constant. Every time I stepped onto the porch, I felt eyes on me from somewhere, sometimes from the tree line, sometimes from one of the windows in Eleanor's main house. Once, as I was locking my door, I caught the movement of a curtain falling back into place in her kitchen. That night, I woke again around 2:15 a.m. The footsteps were back, slower this time, moving from one side of the porch to the other. I held my breath, gripping my phone, ready to call someone if I heard the door handle turn. But after a minute, they faded away toward the trees. In the morning, one of the boots by the fireplace had been moved, angled slightly toward the door. I knew I hadn't touched it. On day 5, I'd had enough. I told myself it was just my imagination, but my nerves were frayed. I decided to leave a day early. While I was packing, I heard a knock. Eleanor stood there, her expression polite but stiff. "You're leaving?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. Something came up with work. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. "You don't have to rush. I've got another guest coming next week, but there's no hurry." The way she lingered on that last phrase made my stomach knot. I mumbled something about beating traffic and shut the door. I loaded my car, and as I drove off, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Eleanor stood on the porch, not waving, just watching. Her blue eyes locked on my car until I turned the corner and she vanished from view. That night, back in my apartment, I unpacked in silence. My phone buzzed with a notification from Aaron, a message from Eleanor. "You left in such a hurry. I hope you didn't see him." My chest went cold. I didn't reply. I reported the message, but by the next morning, her account was gone. The listing had disappeared. A week later, I was scrolling through a local news site when a headline caught my eye. "Man arrested after hiding in Airbnb rental for weeks." The photo showed a man in his late 20s, gaunt, with unkempt hair and dark, sunken eyes. The article said he'd been squatting in the walls and crawl spaces of multiple homes in the Asheville area, one of them matching Eleanor's address. Now I can't stop wondering, how many nights did I sleep with him, just a few feet away, separated only by thin walls?